Hello there, welcome to Penarth Archery Club's YouTube channel. My name is Jeremy. This video is another in the series, Archery the Basics, that I've created and put onto our channel. There are already several videos available, a 3-part series on buying your first bow, a video on arrow assembly, and 2 videos on the static setup of your bow. To follow on from the videos, Basic Bow Setups Part 1 and 2, as I promised, I've done some videos about the bow tuning process to finish the full setup of your bow. We've looked at the static setup on a bow, but now need the archer to start shooting the bow so that we can match the bow setup to their shooting technique and ability. This is the second and final part of the basic bow tuning videos and picks up from part 1 where we had checked the draw weight of the bow, the brace height and knocking height. Now we need to look at the sideways movement of the arrow flight from the bow. For this we will continue using the vertical foam banded boss and shooting distance as in part 1. To look at arrow flight, where we're interested now in the sideways flex of the arrow, I rotate the boss so that the foam strips are in the horizontal position as they are normally. Still with the boss vertical, and replace the tape crosses now across the boss at the same height as previously. Now when the arrows hit the boss, the horizontal alignment of the strips won't interfere in any leaning of the arrows left or right. So we can then clearly see if arrows lean left or right or are straight. Then we can adjust pressure button settings or even adjust the draw weight of the bow to get the best arrow flight. So again, several arrows shot at short distance. We can see whether there is any lean on the arrows. So say the arrow is in the boss and the point is to the left and the nock is to the right. We can see from the Eastern Guide paper tuning images that this indicates a stiff arrow reaction. It means the arrow does not come back into line fully when shot, as I previously described in the basic bow setup video when talking about setting center shot. So the advice here is to slacken off the tension on the pressure button, so allowing the arrow to flex and move in further to the bow, and so should straighten out the arrow. We adjust the pressure button using the Allen keys to unlock either the big adjustment nut on the back of the button for big adjustments, or the small grub screw in that nut for finer adjustments. Then shoot again to see the effect. The strength of the spring in the pressure button can also be changed if needed, as they usually come with several strengths of springs. So there's a lot of adjustment available. If we originally chose a suitable arrow shaft, in terms of the spine of it, the bend of it, when purchasing the gear, we should be able to adjust the pressure button to get acceptable flight. So with a shoot and see method to adjust the pressure button, we just need to check that the arrows are clearing the arrow rest and riser, and should be able to get a setup where the arrows hit the boss relatively straight and true. The quality of the archer's release is on show here, as that directly impacts the flight of the arrow, and this definitely needs to be taken into account when looking at the results. A good consistent release has a reduced effect on arrow flight and vice versa. We can't expect new archers to be consistent straight off, so bear this in mind. So we've arrived at a point where the brace height has been determined, the nock set can be redone as permanent, and we have the pressure button and rest set up for acceptable arrow flight. At this stage there's no reason why the arrow flight should deteriorate the further the arrow travels, except when shooting outdoors where wind and distance plays a part. So the next time the archer is shooting full distance, the arrow flight can be looked at and see whether any further adjustment is needed. The archer can then work on their technique, knowing full well their setup is optimal for them. The idea of bear shaft tuning, where fletched arrows and arrows with no fletchings are shot together, is another method of tuning. But often archers using this method shoot several fletched arrows but only one bear shaft, whereas you should shoot several bear shafts to see how they group. This also needs to be done at distance, so not so convenient. It is also influenced by the archer's ability to shoot good groups at distance. But I find that the results of this paperless tuning system work very well, both for inexperienced archers and more experienced archers. The short distance helps, the focus is on the process of shooting, not the grouping at a further target. It takes less time and can be done away from the range if necessary. If needed, the boss can be moved slightly further away to confirm the results. If the arrows are flying well at 3 to 5 paces, then they are unlikely to deviate when going further. There are more tuning techniques that can be undertaken once the archer is proficient in their shooting style, such as walk-back tuning, but these come into play when shooting over distance on a regular basis. They also need good conditions and good shooting, as they're usually done outdoors, so not something to focus on at this stage. Looking at the different disciplines, all the previous advice is relevant to shooting bare bow with an ILF riser. We will go through the same process of bow tuning using the pressure button to get the best shooting setup. With compound bows, the process does differ. Following on from the information in my earlier videos on basic bow setup, we would really only be looking to see if there are any issues with arrow flight. The setup of the arrow rest or launcher and the center shot should put the archer in a good starting position. We would be looking to ensure that we have a very good straight and level arrow flight from the start. We will do the same short distance shooting, starting with knock-in height, where the process is the same as for recurves. On compounds with adjustable rests, this gives more options to set a level knock height. When shooting at the boss to see if we have a significant arrow flex, this should be easier, as we will hopefully be dealing with a very good release from a release aid, so shots should be more consistent and so easier to interpret. Usually when we see arrow lean from a compound where the end of the shaft leans to the right, a stiff arrow reaction, it tends to be as a result of an incorrect static setup where we didn't actually put the arrow directly in line with the cam string orientation. It may also be there is insufficient clearance of the arrow past the arrow rest or launcher. Sometimes the nock needs to be rotated to get good clearance, or smaller vanes used. Bow hand torque, where there is excess tension in the bow hand, can also influence the arrow flight. The amount of let-offs with modern bows can be up to 80%, so any sideways torquing of the bow, which is easily done, will impact the arrow flight and aiming accuracy. So a relaxed bow hand is essential with compound shooting. Purely for safety reasons, the very low holding weight combined with twisting or torquing the bow can result in the bowstring being pulled off the cam. Not a good idea. Looking at the arrow in the boss, if the knock end of the arrow shaft leans to the left, this indicates a weak arrow reaction. So in addition to the suggestions made already, it may be that the spine of the arrow is too weak for the bow. So either reduce the bow draw weight or choose a different spine of arrow, and this may be successful. With different launchers available, it may well come down to an unsuitable spring blade, where the blade supporting the arrow is too wide or narrow, and either weak or stiff. For this reason, drop-away rests do help to avoid this, although they need a good choice of arrow spine to start with. So we've got the archer using their properly set up equipment, and now their focus can be on improving their technique, perhaps improving their understanding of the equipment and how it works at the same time. The main thing is to get them shooting and enjoying the sport. The pure pleasure of shooting, whether it's a good end of arrows, a good dozen, or good shots at a longer distance, is something we've all experienced and enjoy. As the archer develops and their techniques improve and become more consistent, then the opportunity to revisit this tuning method would be useful. It only takes a few ends of arrows. If all seems okay, fine. If the arrow flight seems to have changed, perhaps because of the quality of their recurve release has improved, then it may need adjustment to the bow setup. It could result in a need to change the spine of the arrows if the change is considerable. My own recurve release, which was not that good, is far more consistent recently, so much so that I changed to a weaker spined arrow than I have shot previously for many years. I could not get particularly good arrow flight with my existing arrows despite altering my setup. So bear in mind that significant changes in form can mean you need to reassess the equipment setup. Obviously changes in draw weight, perhaps from new limbs, or a decision to go up or down in poundage, can result in a change of setup, even arrow spine. So that pretty much covers the journey from buying your first bow, doing the basic static setup, assembling arrows if needed, and finally doing the basic bow tuning. Then it's down to the archer to shoot well and reap the rewards. As always, I hope these videos have been useful and informative for you, and would appreciate it if you could hit the like button below. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, then perhaps considering doing so. So thank you for watching.